Welcome and thanks for joining us today for our monthly Lean Focus webinar series. Today's webinar will be covering the topic of solving customer pain points with design thinking. My name is April Lee and I'm the Managing Director of Lean Focus. Our main presenter for today is our VP of Innovation, George Ellis, who comes from a research and design-oriented background with a marketer's eye on critically applying VOC throughout the process. So today's topic is one that is surprisingly commonly overlooked in the product design process. And we hope that with today's webinar, it will just be a great reminder of how to keep the customer's needs and wants at the forefront. When we take a look at past product launches that may have failed to meet our revenue expectations, did we ever ask ourselves in retrospect whether we did enough VOC work to ensure we helped customers actually solve a problem or a pain? So slide 2, before we begin, I just want to do a reminder of today's presentation that it's proprietary information to Lean Focus and should not be used, disclosed, or reproduced without the consent of Lean Focus. Title in and to this presentation and all information contained herein remains at all times in Lean Focus. So some quick webinar logistics. You are in listen-only mode. There are some PDF handouts made available in the control panel to support this topic. And we will hold a Q&A at the end. So please go ahead and type any questions you may have throughout the presentation into the chat function for our presenter, and we'll be answering them at the end. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to you about one day after, and you may check your spam folder if you don't see it. So on to the next slide, a little about who we are at Lean Focus. We help our clients transform their cultures into high-performance cultures by helping them train, coach, and sustain results using our proprietary Lean-focused business system tools and processes. We focus on developing and placing driven leaders either through our training practices or our executive talent solution services, where we specialize in recruiting and placing top Lean talent. We stress that there's a change management element to culture sustainment. And so we really help through that, through a continuous improvement mindset, both in teaching and applying it systematically. And lastly, we have our own proven systems that we apply through both implementation methodology as well as licensing materials for companies to be able to achieve their results in the long term and hit the ground running. So on the next slide, I'm going to introduce some of the 8 practice areas Lean Focus oversees. This is how we can help drive lean growth and strategic improvements within your business based on your unique industry, challenge areas, product types, and organizational needs you might have. Our team comes from leadership backgrounds that help you navigate your strategy at a holistic, enterprise-wide perspective, with abilities to drill down and teach associates how to implement and sustain those improvements on the front line. We specialize in culture transformation at all levels of the business, pulling from the expertise of our commercial growth and lean practitioners, MA&I senior leaders, and talent solutions professionals. So on the next slide, there are some examples of companies that we've helped achieve results with. If you can turn it, yep, thanks. And as you can see, our methodology is industry agnostic and can be applicable to different areas of manufacturing, operations, and commercial areas as well, such as in sales, marketing, customer service, HR, and finance. We really help clients identify what strategic objective they're trying to achieve, and then we can apply the right approach and lean tool to get them there. On the next slide, we're going to show you some of our proprietary Lean-focused business system tools, which can actually be licensed materials as well. And it may be a little hard to read. It's a little small, but the main idea is that we can help you build out the right toolbox that's necessary for your business and the goals that you're trying to achieve. We start with the foundational tool set where we really try to build a strong CI foundation of problem solving, daily management, applied methodologies towards process improvements that really help get you there. And then with more mature or more complex processes, we might apply a specific lean growth or leadership tool to help achieve what your organization needs. But our team of experts can help you identify and source correctly on how we might approach that situation for you. So with that, I've done a little bit of an intro to Lean Focus, and now I'd like to turn it over to your presenter, George Ellis. George, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thanks, April. Always appreciate you going through that, and it's interesting to hear it every time. Yeah, so I'm George Ellis, and so I've spent most of my life, most of my career as a technical contributor. And somewhere along the line about 15 years ago, just fell in love with what lean thinking could do for people who were developing products. And, you know, I developed a few products and, you know, I just already started feeling the frustration of, you know, not, you know, the whole process of development. And as an engineer, I felt frustrated because I want to apply my creativity to really important problems, but it's just not that easy a thing to do. And having a great process allows that. And so that's the first thing you know, there was, I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a LinkedIn, a little discussion on LinkedIn that Damon got started, you know, that some people think that you have to pick between being innovative and creative or being lean, because being lean, you're just thinking about process and check the box. Innovative and creative, well, you're just, you know, you just blue sky. Don't fall for that. It's exactly the opposite. If you think about your life as a developer, part of what you do, and a developer, part of a developer team or a marketer, part of what you do is what I would say stuff that can be standardized, easy stuff that we can really make simple and make and do it and structure it. And we want to do that, so you spend the minimal amount of time doing that. I remember the frustration of having to walk a request through, a capital request through, because the only way I could get my leadership team to sign it was to go sit in front of one of their offices. It took me 2 hours. I thought, why did I go to school to learn how to do that? Well, lean thinking helps us create approval processes that are, you know, that don't take that kind of time. So why? So we can go do more creative things. So everything you're going to see here today is not about trying to give you a checklist and figure out how your job could be done by somebody who knows less. Just the opposite. It's to get you doing the things only you can do, because that's where you're going to be happiest, and that's where the company's going to get the most value, and that's where you're going to delight your customers. So we're in this, well, this is our agenda for the day. Right now, we're going to talk about defining the problems, and we'll walk through this agenda. The first thing I want to tell you is the innovation journey is a lot. It's complex. It requires a huge range of skills. No one person has them all. And it starts over here on the left from customer segmentation and understanding new technologies and how to work with third parties, all the way over to getting a product launched and financially successful, and then sustaining that product over time. It's a journey that for most companies is 5 to 10 years. And so if you struggle with the innovation, you say, you know, we struggle in it. Every company struggles in it. It's so many skills. I've often heard it said that product development is one of the most cross-functional areas any company takes on. I totally believe it. Now today, we're just going to talk about design thinking. So we're going to limit ourselves to this one area. And so let's talk about what design thinking is. But before we do that, I do want you to take a look at something. Design thinking occurs between when we aspire. In other words, we know what segment we want. We have a pretty good idea what technologies we have. We know our IP and our partnerships. Those things are pretty well laid out. I'm not saying they're cast in stone, but we know pretty much where we're going. But it's before the really heavy lift of product design occurs. So this design, this is where the money is spent, right? This is where you've got 15 engineers working for 2 years, or 150 engineers working for 2 years, or even more. So we're in that place between knowing where we want to go, but we're not ready to start. We're really trying to understand what customers need, so that when we get this machine started and start spending that real money, it's going right where the customer values it. So why are we doing this? What's the burning platform? Well, as I say here, uninspired products don't create a lot of profit. And so here's one example for you, published where we have a published study that people that use design thinking wind up having double the performance of their peers that don't use it. And so it's an amazing payoff for an investment. And so the burning platform is we want products that create profit. And you might say, is all we care about profit? Is this just all to make money? Well, of course companies have to make money, but I want you to look at it a different way. If your products bring your customers value, they will pay for them. If they don't bring value, they won't. And so, and T.G. Ono taught us this from the Toyota production system 3/4 of a century ago. If you want to understand what a customer values, it's what they're willing to pay for something. We want to make value, you know, as engineers, and I told you a few moments ago, when I was an engineer, I want to make products people buy, bring over, use, value, and they help. I don't want to make products that don't sell, and I'm sure you guys don't either. So let's back up a little bit and talk about problems, symptoms, and causes, because these three get confused, and it's really important for this conversation that we keep them separate. So let me give you a famous example, one I just went through a few months ago. You have symptoms that are things that are obvious. They're how you feel. I'm tired, I've got chills, I've got a headache. There's a problem that's quantifiable. Symptoms are obvious, but they're hard to quantify. The problem is you have a fever. And then there's a root cause. The root cause is something I can treat. I normally can't see it. Of course, that's why it's called a root cause, right? It's below ground. But it's actionable. And in my case, I had the joy of having a perforated appendix. And so the point I want to make is when people start talking about issues in innovation, you will watch them switch from one to the other of these just constantly and confusing them. We don't want to confuse them. We want to keep them separate because that's going to help us find root causes we can take action on and actually get better. So let's talk about root cause from product launches. And so think about, we have a product launch, and think about now back to the design process, what might have happened? Well, we created too many Me Too products. And I call them spec tweakers. Do you guys know this? This is like where, you have a spec, you're working on a product, whatever, it goes fast, it generates noise, it uses power, whatever it is. There's a spec sheet, there's 25 specs on it. This is an important one. And you take it from whatever, 7 microns to 6 microns. They're these spec tweakers, and they seem really important as an engineer because you can get lost in the specs, but a lot of times customers won't pay a lot more for that. They don't value it. If I have a product where whatever the tolerance is, 6 microns, and it works for me, and you make one that's 5 microns, what do I care? 6 microns works. There's no value in it. So those spec tweakers and Me Too products where you're just copying what other people do, that's a big problem with products when that we take to market. Our solutions feel out of date. That really comes from the first one. Our customers think our products are difficult to use. I've come across this again and again. We go do some kind of a survey with a customer. What do you need? And then we go and make a product, take it all the way to the end, and then, ta-da, 2 years later, here's our product, and customers have the hardest time using it. And it's a lot of times for dumb stuff. And then another one is that our VOC from customers is confusing or conflicting. When I say VOC, I mean voice of the customer. It's just the process of going out and asking people questions or going out and observing them. By the way, you're going to hear more as we come up, but we need to do, think about, how do I observe more and ask less? Because when you ask a customer, you're seeing it all through the filter of the customer's eyes. Still valuable information, but when you observe it, there's no filter, you're watching. And so a combination of both is what makes sense. But, we have customer feedback. How does VOC work at my company? Maybe, I know there's this one guy that calls people. I'm not sure who he calls. I'm not sure what he does with the information. That's really common. Or another one that I like is, well, there are these two guys that go get VOC, but they never seem to come back with anything new. I mean, they go ask customers questions, but they always just seem to come back with what they thought in the first place. So this is a huge problem in innovation. It's finding ways to get unbiased VOC and not turning it over to 1 or 2 people to go do it. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. What's the measurable problem? Our portfolio is out of date and confusing. And, we look at the products that we're offering and they're just not appealing. And then what are some of the root causes? What are the things that cause this? And I want to draw your attention to 4 root causes. One of them is we lack the tools to unlock collaborative ideation. And that's what a lot of design thinking is about. That's what we're going to spend a lot of time today. A second one is we don't have a structured way to bring workflow experts in. What's a workflow expert? You'll hear me use that several times. That's people that really know how to use the product. They might be a customer. They might be a consultant to that customer. They might be your applications engineer. They might be salespeople that are very hands-on. They might be technical field specialists. They're probably not your average sales engineer. They're probably not your average product marketer. It's somebody that can go into a setting and actually work the machinery or work the software or work whatever it is your product or service is, and they really understand what customers value, whether it be running tests in a hospital lab or running an assembly station on a factory floor, or running software for someone who's trying to exchange currency. Whatever it is, they really understand the workflow. They're normally not the technical expert. Typically, companies have technical experts, your scientists and chief engineers that really understand the technology, but those people typically don't have that day-to-day interaction with the workflow. That workflow expertise is going to be very important in what we talk about in a few minutes. A third one is ivory tower inventions. We talked about it a little bit. You know, we go out, ask a few questions. All right, I got this. We bring it in, and then we go build a whole product around it. And we don't include the customer in the journey. And that happens all the time. You know, I can't tell you how many projects I've come to and I see the project plan and I say, where's the customer in your project plan? Where do they see it? And people tell me, oh, here at Beta. We asked them some questions at the very beginning before we started the project, and we have a beta. I was like, a beta? When do you release your beta? Oh, about 2 months before launch. So you're going to give them a beta. You're going to let them have some time to do it. They're going to give you information about a day and a half before launch. What exactly is the difference that that's going to make? And so we want to get out of that ivory tower mode that we just ask them, that we send somebody to ask questions in the beginning. We give somebody a beta and see what they think. We want to bring that customer on that whole journey, really get our hands dirty in a sense of getting involved with the customer at every step. And then finally, it's design how we think customers should do things versus how they actually do them. And so that's another common area, is like, we think there's a way they should be used. What are customers really doing? I talked to you a few moments ago about observing. Go observe. If you haven't observed, you'll always be surprised. So these are 4 root causes we're going to tackle over the next few minutes when we talk about design thinking. Now, I just want to, just as an aside, I want to take that whole innovation journey. Remember the one I showed you a moment ago? I said this thing is 5 to 10 years long. There's all sorts of root causes in those, and we work in all of these areas. Right now, we're focusing in this discover area, and we're really just focusing on the design thinking part. But I want you guys to understand that when we look at the root causes in all of innovation, there are just dozens and dozens of common ones, and I don't even know how many of them there are total, but there are a lot of root causes. We're going to be very focused right now in one area, but understand that we treat every area of innovation this way. So let's talk about value and waste for a moment. So lean thinking, one of the tenets of lean thinking that's really counterintuitive is everything we do in a day either creates value for our customers, something a customer is willing to pay for, or it creates waste. Most of us don't look at the world that way. Most of us look at the world of, if I'm busy, I'm doing good, right? I'm doing my best, I'm trying hard, that's good, right? I'm adding value, right? Wrong. W. Edwards Deming, one of the leaders in lean thinking with the Toyota production system back in the 50s and beyond, he used to say, it is not enough to do your best. We must know what the right thing to do is and then do our best. Because if you're spending a lot of busyness on something that doesn't create value, that's just waste. It may be hard to do, but it's still waste. What are things in innovation? What are things customers will pay for? Products that are compliant to regulatory, they're fit for use, they really do the job, they're profitable for the customer and they're profitable for the company, so we can sustain them. They're innovative, there's something different, and they're available on time. You did it when you said you would. Those are points of value. Most other stuff is waste. And a lot of people think, oh, sure, on the factory floor, I get that. But what about in innovation? Well, on the factory floor, if I want to find waste, it's pretty easy. I just go out on the factory floor, stand for a few hours and watch. And I look for 2 things. I look for scrap and I look for buggies of work in progress. And maybe I go over and take a look at inventory in shipping and incoming. Give me those 3 things, I can tell you a ton about waste in just a few minutes. But in innovation, all of that happens in our heads. You can't, there's no way to see that. So how do we know what waste is? Frustration. I believe that frustration is the #1 way to find waste. Waste is, it's a villain. It creates a huge amount of frustration. It's large. You know, most lean experts, and I'm with them on this, believe that only 15%, maybe less, of what we do really creates value. 85% is waste. You may say, oh, God, not me. I know not 85% of my day is waste. Well, let me ask you this. If you had a perfect day with perfect information, colleagues that were always ready, always had what you needed, that you knew what the customer really wanted, that the data was always right, how much could you get done in a perfect day? My belief, you could get about a week's worth of work done on a perfect day. And if you do that math, that says you're maybe at 80% waste. I believe that. Waste is hidden. Of course it's hidden. People who are in this work, they want to do a great job, right? People didn't go to college, spend decades becoming experts in what they do so they can do a bad job. Nobody enjoys waste. It makes everybody angry, but it's hidden. You know it's hidden because if people could see it, they just get rid of it. It's systemic. Most waste is caused by good people trying to do the right thing, and it's destructive. The time spent on waste could be invested in growing innovation and expertise in our people, people being satisfied, customers being delighted, stakeholders being satisfied. And all this goes down to Taiichi Ohno, one of my favorite writers. I think I might have even mentioned him a moment ago, but he was the father of the Toyota production system. And he said, if you're going to do Kaizen, you've got to assume things are a mess. And what he meant by that was most of what we do is waste. And here's the good news about that, though. When you're in if you're in an environment where you need to get more done because you have a wasteful environment and the boss is like, do more, work harder, we need this done, work the weekend, you'll get a push. Okay, it's kind of think of it as a try harder. Things are wrong here because people didn't read enough, they're not trained enough, they're not doing enough, they don't care enough. By the way, I very rarely see that. The engineers I meet, they all care. They're in a wasteful system. What happens when you push people harder? Sure, there's a bump in value, but there's also a bump in waste. You get the effort, you get the value, but the wasteful system also drives more waste. Time goes on, it's a fleeting benefit. People can't keep it up. What I love about lean thinking is the picture I'm about to show you. The sustainable benefit of cutting waste, and we're going to do that in a few minutes with design thinking, is that we actually cut the waste so the value we contribute goes up and we're able to get the work done without putting in more hours. And what will happen over time, people just get naturally more engaged, more satisfied with what they're doing. They really like work. They spend all of a sudden things are interesting. They're reading more about things we can do differently. And so you'll get a natural increase in effort, but we don't push it. What we do is drive waste out because it's a sustainable increase in value. And you know, the customer wins, the engineers and product developers and software and product marketers, software developers, everybody is more satisfied with their jobs. And like I said, everybody wins except the competitor. Now in innovation, it's hidden and people kind of close that door, and I see it all the time. People are innovative, you know, it's my system, it works, you know, you don't understand how hard I've worked on it. But when you look, and everything's fine, you don't need to look in here. We don't have waste. But when you really look inside the cabinet, you find all kinds of waste and innovation. It's just like every other place. Meetings, because projects are late. Oh, I made a mistake because the process, I didn't follow it, or the process was bad. We created a quality defect. Now we've got like 6 different meetings in the factory to go deal with the 5 angry customers. Now there's extra meetings. Now the boss wants to talk to me. Now I got to go to a leadership meeting and explain what happened. All that waste because we didn't have a process that reminded us that, you know, whatever, don't use glue to hold things that are in a high vibration environment where there's high humidity, or whatever the rule is. Simple rules get violated and they cause huge amounts of waste. I want you guys to understand, none of this is about taking away your creativity. It's about getting rid of this waste so you can spend more time being creative. And so this is what lean thinking is all about. Now, what's design thinking and how does it fit in? So design thinking is human-centered design. We don't start with the technology. We don't start with what our old product did. We start by looking at what people endure. We begin by empathizing with people who use our products and what experiences they go through. And we want to improve their experiences. And we want to also increase their success in their vocation. So we want to provide products. If I'm doing something that tests samples in a hospital lab, I want to test samples better. So my hospital lab director can now go through tests faster and find more things and be more and contribute more to people's lives and spend less time rerunning samples because we failed the first time. So think about the frustration of that doctor that wants to save people's lives that instead is having to go redo a biopsy. That's an example to me of like, nobody likes running the machine twice because there was an error. So think about that human-centered side. We want to make that customer less frustrated. We want to make them more successful. Take away the pain, increase the gain. And you've always got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. And that's that Stephen Jobs quote that you see down there. So what is design thinking? How's it done? Well, design thinking is implemented by a lot of companies. I think, if I'm not mistaken, IDEO was one of the inventors, but there are several companies that use it, and they generally revolve around 5 steps. You see 2 on the left, which is go empathize with that user. Go watch them. I remember this story that someone told me. Someone told me a story about. They were making I don't want to get into too much detail, but they were making a medical device that a doctor wore. Okay, so when the doctor was examining the patient, they wore this device, something like a stethoscope, but it wasn't a stethoscope. But they had this device, and it had a wire on it, and we didn't know the wire caused a problem. And then we just went and observed the doctor, and the doctor would like lean over, the wire got caught on the exam table. And, the doctor's just frustrated. That might not be something a doctor thinks to tell you, but you're observing, you're like, why is that wire doing that? And so you're just really empathizing with somebody who's trying to take care of a patient and does not want to be sitting here thinking about, I just got a wire caught in a chair, now this whole thing's pulled out, I look foolish, and also I'm not helping my patient. So to me, I love that example of just such a simple thing to go observe. And then define what is it? What is the workflow that the customer is doing? Now, all of this in Lean Focus, we call this user workflow discovery. Now, we're not going to talk about that very much today. In fact, we're pretty much done. But if you want to go see a webinar on it, you can go to our website, and the link will come up in just a moment. And on January 17th, I did a webinar on these 2 steps. But today, we're going to talk about what we call design thinking, which is the second half. And you might say, hey, why did you guys at Lean Focus divide it in 2? And the reason is because we believe we want to go do this step, and then typically there is 6 to 12 weeks between these 2 steps. So you go out and spend some weeks really understanding the customer. That gives you a chance then to go understand what needs to be done, go investigate the technology, go investigate opportunities with third-party partners, go, take this to the staff, to your company staff, and get an understanding of how it fits in with the products in your company. We think there's a lot of time between step 2 and step 3, and very often they're just jammed together as if you could do them in 1 week, and you really can't. So we divide them into 2 because we think that you need time in here between when I understand what the customer needs and how I'm going to satisfy it. Now, that just doesn't happen in 10 minutes. At least if you're diligent. So the 3 steps that we're going to think about here are, how do I ideate? How do I come up with new ideas to improve things? How do I prototype? How do I do really quick prototypes? Not that beta that happens 2 months before launch. How do I go use 3D printing? How do I go use, how do I go use glue and any other thing that can show the customer and we see if it solves their problem? Excuse me. And then finally, how do I test? How do I take this back to the customer and say, did it work? Did that solve your problem? Think about how un-ivory tower that is. Before I go design my beautiful invention, I'm going to go hack together something that does the absolute minimum, and I'm going to go back to the customer, and I'm going to hear the customer say, and I've heard both. I've heard some customers say, yes, I really like that, go forward. And I've heard customers say, did you not listen to a thing I said? That had nothing to do with what I was talking about. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, please tell me again. Go back, cycle, do it again. Until that customer comes back and says, yes, you've got it, this is what I need. And there are all kinds of ways to do this. Don't think that you have to build an entire product or go through something that has to go through medical regulatory process, you don't. There are all kinds of techniques where we can get things out in front of customers quickly. Just to throw one quick example out there, there's what's called the man behind the curtain method. So the man behind the curtain method would be like, let's say I wanted to try out, let's take an old invention, an iPod. I want to try out an iPod. Well, I can make a little iPod with a switch that has a wire on it that goes to headphones, and that wire could trail off to the man behind the curtain. And when the customer pushes a button, I've got a whole thing back here that's the innards of an iPod, and I go and there's somebody back there making it happen live, so the customer experience is what they'll get with the final product before I've designed anything. So that's called the man behind the curtain method. So there's lots of these kinds of methods where we can try ideas out and make sure we're really satisfying a customer's need. Because customers are like patients. They know what hurts. They don't know how to fix it. If they knew how to fix it, they'd have your job because they'd be the experts in the technology. They don't, and they don't need to, but they do know what hurts. And what we're going to do is we're going to help them take those things that hurt and make them hurt less. So one of the things we want to talk about is customer need driven. What are the things that drive customer needs? I love this picture. This, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm super nerdy, but when I look at this picture, this is really based on the elements of value. And different companies have different elements of value. These are lean focuses, but they all look a lot like this. First off, there's functional value. I need access to information, or I need information. I need a short-term or long-term reward. You see them here. Cost reduction. These are very tangible things that people need. So think of these as the most tangible, the things that really pay the bills. So if a doctor's going to come to you and buy your new $100,000, mobile tester, so that you don't have to send somebody to the hospital, that doctor's probably going to want to know, what's the long-term reward? Am I going to make my money back on this? Okay, that's one question that doctor's going to ask. But the doctor's probably going to ask other questions. For example, help others, emotionally. Am I helping that customer because now I don't have to send them for another appointment and they wait 2 weeks and maybe they're worried that whole time, and I can help them and I can allay all that. I can really help somebody. Or maybe, maybe it's that it's engaging. Hey, I can bring more customers in. If I tell them I can do this on site, they're going to come and they're going to feel it's engaging. So there are these things. I feel it's engaging. I can bring people in. So it's emotional. And then there's social. How do I feel? If I'm able to do this, do my colleagues view me as more of an expert? Am I more connected in my network? Do I sense more status because and these are the social rewards. People have lots of different ways that they can rate value, okay? These are needs that people have. This is not the one and only way to do it, but this is a good way. So when you guys are thinking about, hey, I'm gonna go take this feature and it's gonna be good, and someone says, well, you want me to take your word for it? Why is it good? What we want you to do is point to the 3 boxes on the screen where you're bringing value, where you're answering customer needs. Don't just tell me, oh, customers want this. Show me customers need this because they need information. Customers need this because what they do now is too complex. Do you guys see what I mean? Get people to quantify more, to think through why, versus just, I know people want this because I know how this works. Because probably you don't. Most of us don't. Now, this is customer need driven. Now, I don't want to get away from the fact that there's a lot of technology inspired products as well. And it's where we come to a set of technology and we say like, gosh, this is something really new and different, and I can do something. A famous example is the tiny drive. And I hope I'm quoting the story right here, but I believe it was Steve Jobs that had like a tiny, the beginning of the iPod, tiny data storage. And he said, what can we do to use this to make something better? And that story might be apocryphal, don't quote me on it. But the idea is I can say like, we could never do this before, now we can do it. How can we use that? I don't have a problem with people looking at technologies that are enabled by things like blockchain, like big data, like AI. But I want to come back to what I think I had it right here. It was Steve Jobs, the guy who I just was talking about a moment ago. You still have to start with customer experience and work your way back to the technology. So never let the technology drive the product. That's a great way to spend a whole lot of money in a short period of time and not come up with much. But so every product we have, though, actually what I'll argue is every product has an unmet need and has a technology. Why do I say that? Why aren't there things that are just pure unmet need? Oh, I'm going to go out into the market where nothing has changed for 20 years, and somehow I'm going to go find some new unmet need. Probably not, right? The technology's been stable for a long time. People have probably figured out. So it's what can be done with, say, 20-year-old technology. So technology changing and uncovering user need, it's those two things together that it's finding the place. Most of the time, you're looking for a place in the middle where we can create and satisfy needs that unmet needs that couldn't be met before in a way they can now. But always, beware of Google Glass, beware of Segway, where you can spend huge amounts of money because you have amazing technology that doesn't really seem to meet a need. And there's Google Glass and Segway are a couple. There are huge numbers of these products, and I'm sorry to say I've worked on a couple where we moved technology forward and it wasn't what customers needed. Now, what's the difference between design thinking and traditional thinking? Are we saying that, hey, there's an old way of thinking, forget all that, come this new way and do design thinking? Absolutely not. Traditional design did some things that were very well. And what you see in orange was, it was most traditional design is very technology based. I mean, I've worked with dozens of engineering organizations, dozens and dozens of them. I never stop being impressed by the level of technological expertise people have in everything you can imagine. It's just unbelievable how much technical specialization we have and how many experts there are out there. It's hands-on. People actually go out there, they work, they see the prototype work. They may not take it in front of the customer, but it's rigorous. I mean, they really work hard and it's creative. There's nothing uncreative about traditional design. It's not the problem that people aren't creative, but the problem is it can be overly spec focused. It can be satisfied with the next iteration. It can be very internally focused. Oh, there's what we've always done. Let's go do some more like that. And it can fail to delight users. So I think of design thinking as additive to traditional process. We keep those four good things. I don't want to give away that technological expertise. That guy has been doing those optical designs for 25 years, has 73 patents, and is world recognized. I want him on the team, and I want him doing it every bit of that he can. But let's go get more human-centered. Let's go watch people use our product. Let's break down silos and bring in those workflow experts. Let's have iterative user feedback. Let's take it to customers, see what they say, take it again, see what they say. So, don't think of this as taking away the things we do well. Think about adding things we can do better. And when you think about products, you can think about disruptive versus revolutionary. And one of the things I love is the Netflix example. If a product is inside our capability and it's evolutionary for our customer, traditional is probably fine. But if it's revolutionary, we need something breakthrough. We need design thinking to get there. If it's disruptive, that's bad. I think of disruptive to us. That's where it's outside our capability and it's revolutionary, and we are sitting ducks for our competitors, and we need to learn design thinking so that we are able to bring this inside. But in general, we're talking a lot here about our breakthrough thinking. So keep that traditional development for incremental development. Don't stop doing that. There's nothing wrong with it. This is additive. Get more breakthrough thinking. Who's doing it? Well, you guys see the names. Lots of folks are doing design thinking. They're the biggest, they're marquee names. They're fantastic companies. So innovation. So I want to talk about Doblin's 10 types of innovations, a very famous way to break down innovation in 10 ways. So, I don't have to just innovate by making a faster car. I can innovate by having service for my car that I conduct over the internet. I can have a different kind of monetization. Adobe did a big move about 5 or 7 years ago to move their products to SaaS. They were one of the leaders in new products that did that, and so they didn't. The product, there was a monetization. That was really the innovation. What I want to warn you about, and especially if you're an engineer, don't confuse innovation with performance improvement. There are 9 other ways to innovate. I mean, process is my favorite one. That's what I do for a living. We try to create innovative process, which helps people bring out products faster and more meeting customer needs. And it's more, and in the end, we bring more innovation. So, process down here is a big one for me. Don't get confused. Performance and features are not the same thing as innovation. So I want to give you an example. I told you a few minutes ago that I had a perforated appendix, and I got to experience the Doblin's method firsthand. So there's this cool device. If you've never heard of it, they've been around for a while, but I never heard of it. It's called a wound vac, and you basically put this sponge, you see it right here, over a wound. If you have a large wound like the size of an apple, and it creates a vacuum which kills the bacteria and basically takes healing up by a factor of 5 times faster. It's freaking amazing. It's an amazing product. But is the product really the innovation? I mean, they could have had an amazing product and I never heard of it because they didn't have a partnership with 3M where they got this out to every doctor in America that wanted it. I might not have been able to use this device, but these guys did innovation in their process by creating a training and education product so they could create nursing home healthcare. So I live in a rural part of Virginia. I got on the phone, called a number, and the nurse said, I'll be there tomorrow. Because when you have these kinds of wounds, you can't leave the house, so a nurse has to come help you. Sure, fantastic performance. But if you just let yourself fall into the trap of better performance, you're not going to see all these other amazing innovation methods that you have available to you to improve the customer experience. You're not going to bring the value to the customers that you should. So design thinking, we think about all 10 types of innovation. And we actually ask you to go through, as you're designing a new product, we're going to go very lean thinking wise and break out what are the innovations, and then which kind of innovation are they, and then which kind of need do they fulfill. We're going to really slice and dice this data so we deeply understand what we're providing for customers. No more of like a high guy in the company who just says, yeah, that's a great product, let's go do it. We're going to have a company-wide consensus based on data. And one of the places we start is we understand the customer workflow. So this is a typical workflow document or representation of a multi-persona workflow. These are all the things that happen, and the different colors are different people. You guys have probably seen personas and you've probably seen workflows, but they're always single persona. I go into a Starbucks, I get in line, I order my coffee, I look at the desserts, I think, oh, I'd like that dessert. While I go up to order my coffee, I order my dessert, voila, I've just increased my sales at Starbucks, right? That's an old one. But think about multi-persona workflows. I've got customers, doctors, patients, front office staff. I've got guys on the factory floor, salesmen, again, customers, customer service. These are, especially when you're in a B2B business, you've got multi-persona workflows and they have to make sense. And what happens in multi-persona workflows? Lots and lots of handoffs. And so when we go do our workflow discovery, we bring in the workflow. This is what we call user workflow discovery. It's bringing it in a multi-persona format so that we're able to really see where the pain points are. So design thinking, I know I've just got a few more minutes. Guys, I get so excited about this stuff. I swear I could talk to this till 5 in the afternoon. I don't think I have many with you, but I never get tired of this stuff. It's so much fun. But when we do design thinking, then remember, this is steps 3, 4, 5. We have the equivalent of this for steps 1, 2. That's back in the January webinar. This is just 3, 4, 5. I've got my customer workflow. I know my pain points. Now, how am I going to satisfy it and get a design structure in place, okay? So we have a 10-step workflow. Of course, in the time we have allotted here, I can't go over all 10, but I can go over a few of them. And the first thing is get a balanced team. So many people go out and try to do this work with a bunch of engineers sitting around a table. Get some people who can get you hooked up with customers. I call them matchmakers here, but they're salespeople who know customers, who are willing to help us. Some customers will take time, take calls, listen to us. Not all customers feel that way. Some customers have their own problems and they consider this our problem. Okay, but there are some customers that will get on the phone with us and participate. Get somebody from sales on your team so you're talking to customers all the time. Get these customer workflow experts. Somebody from applications engineering, somebody from customer service who knows how mad people get. When things break and they have to return them, get people who are customer facing on your team, and get your technical experts, right? Of course you have those. And now you've got a full team. You know, I always think it's good to have a facilitator, somebody to keep you true to the process, somebody to help when there's conflict. And now you have a team that can really go out in a very short period of time. I'm talking 4 to 8 weeks. Find innovative solutions to companies that can become the basis of projects that can be very successful. I want to talk about this building great products, and I'm referencing Dan Olson here. He calls this the product market fit. And think about the foundation as having an attractive segment. We go from an attractive segment to finding unmet needs. We talked about that a lot already today. Then we go from an unmet need to a value proposition. So this is what we think we can do. Value proposition, not a short list of features. Value proposition that really explains why the customer wants it, how it will help them, and why they believe it will work. And then finally to our products and the technical promise they bring. Now, when you look at this is the left half of that workflow I showed you. At Lean Focus, we break these up. We start by doing segmentation to understand the attractive segments. So it's very hard to go into this process if you don't know what segments you're working on. We go in then to, this is the one from January 17th, user workflow discovery to get those unmet needs. Then we step through, we get design thinking to find that value prop, and that's our goal in design thinking, is to have a product that's so well built out that we have a fully validated value prop. And then finally, after that, we go into our project requirements Kaizen, and this is the really diligent part where you may have 15 or 25 pages defining what you're doing, so that when you go into that $2 million project, you know exactly where you're going. So think of this as a sketch, and this is a detailed map. Now, between those is what's called the product market fit, your solution to the problem. And what we need is a product, and this is the magic, is finding that product market fit. Design thinking, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's really all focused around the value proposition. Now, I want to show you a picture that refers back to what we did earlier. You start with the user. We always start with the user design. Human-centered design always flows up towards the technology and the product. On the one side, we find the gain gaps. Where does a customer, I have a doctor. He can only see 12 patients a day for this problem, for this issue. How can I make it so he can see 16? That's a gain accelerator. He may not be complaining, but we can really help him. Okay, I have a machine in a factory that constantly is running out of consumables. How can I alleviate that pain point? So, I can approach it from the user and understand what are their pain alleviators. I can find out what are their gain accelerators. But ultimately, I have to do it through critical use cases. It's not, I think this is what doctors want. It's like when a doctor puts a sample in a tester, and that tester has to incubate, and that incubation lasts for 340 minutes, and it fails, it's a freaking disaster for that day. Okay, I need that critical use case. So, and that drives me up then to how I make a product that fulfills that. Do you guys see how structured all this is? This isn't one person giving their opinion, good feature, bad feature. This isn't the boss of the company saying, yeah, we got to do it that way. This is a whole team of people intimately aware of what customers need, of what the technology can do, and how we can create products that fulfill those unmet needs. And so now let's go back to our original problem tree. Remember this? We started with this. Let's talk about our root causes. Whereas before we said there's no tool to unlock collaboration, collaborative ideation. Yeah, there is. You just saw it. Design thinking. We're going to pull a team together and we're going to collaborate. Next one, no structured way, ivory tower inventions. We don't include the customer. We're going to include the customer the entire way. We're going to be talking to them every 4 or 6 weeks, as often as they can stand it. No structured way to bring workflow experts early. Well, you saw that when we build the team. We have those workflow experts. We have that structured way to make sure that those customer-facing experts are heard from day one. And then finally, we design around real workflows, real users. We go ask real questions. Everybody on the team, not just the marketing guy. Hey, engineer, put down your computer, get on an airplane, go talk to some customers. Go see, I remember the one time we got a customer who really, an engineer who really didn't want to go see a customer. I had to almost push him out the door. He got in front of the customer. The customer looked at what he had been working on for months and he wouldn't go see her. And I remember you probably heard me tell this story before. I tell it all the time if you've been to many of my webinars. And she looked at what he was doing and she said, "That is so stupid." Literally, that's what she said to him. And he was taken aback. But you know, he came back within 2 weeks. He had a superior product because he went and listened to a customer. So go design around real customers. And then what happens is our portfolio is balanced. And then what we see is we have innovative products that delight our customers. We take share. Our products are easy to use because they're designed around customers. And the whole team has deep understanding of customer needs. Guys, this is sustainable stuff. You can use this again and again on your products. So what are some next steps? I gotta hurry up. I know I can see April and her face like, "George, you're running late again." There's a little 2-pager that you guys can download and just get a story of what we're doing. I want to tell you, if you guys are interested in this method, please reach out. This is what I do for a living. If we can take this method, we can implement it in your company, we can do it in a week. This is something we can do quickly. So if this is something you're interested in, please reach out. I know people are hesitant and they're a little uncomfortable. You guys, my name, George.ellis@leanfocus.com. Please contact me. I'd love to talk to you about it. And we can come do this. This is not a 5-year project. This is a let's decide to do it in May, and we've got it up and running in July type project. So please feel free to contact me. If you like this, if you like this webinar, we have many webinars that you'll see at this link. I also do a newsletter called the Lean Innovation Journey. I write every week or two on some topic where I've really seen some special things happen, and it's really up to date. It's always just like what's happened to me in the last week or two and how amazing it is to bring lean on the innovation journey. And then finally, if you really like this stuff, I've got a couple of books here that you can go purchase on Amazon. And if that would help you, that would be great. Lean Focus has lots of webinars. They're not just on innovation. If you'll go to this site, you'll see all of our webinars, and we have them back for quite some time. And then finally, my closing thought. I've used this one before. I love this closing thought from Eli Goldratt. When you see the frustration, when people are yelling, when people are like, "You didn't give it to me, you guys did it wrong, this customer is angry, I don't even understand what you want, we don't have the technology," and you're hearing that in the room and the frustration is getting pitched, remember, people are good. Every conflict can be removed. Every situation is simple, no matter how complex it looks. We can substantially improve it. Every person can reach a full life, and there's always a win-win solution. I so believe this with engineers. I don't know if it happens everywhere. I'm not sure if every situation meets this, but I will tell you this. When I'm with engineers, they care. And when I'm with developers, product marketers, customer-facing people, they care. And I really believe this, and so I love this parting quote. So I know I didn't leave enough time, April. Sorry, but do we have any questions?
Yeah, please feel free to type a question for George into the chat. And George, another wonderful webinar. I always take away something, and I think that the Doblin model really stuck with me on this one, where, with those variables of how to think about innovation, it's almost an opportunity cost not to think about all the different ways to innovate on your launch. So well done. Love that.
It's huge. It's huge. I just real quickly, I remember one example where we had a customer, and it was a big box store, and they had a device that they were using for at all their locations, and it measured something. I don't want to say exactly what it measured something, and we were trying to get it more and more and more and more accurate. And they came back to us and said, "Could you please just get it so we can get updates over the internet?" This was 4 or 5 years ago, so it's a little bit, it's a different time. That's more common now. It's a little less common then. But the point is, we were working on the whole wrong type of innovation. We were working on performance, and they wanted service.
George, I got a question that's come in. It's related to slide 39. They're asking, I don't understand why you need both pain points and gain gaps. They seem like the same thing. So slide 39.
Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, that's not the first time that question's been asked. and I'll explain why. Let me just get that back on screen, get the basketball court back up there. Yeah, the reason is some things, if you go talk to a customer and you say, you know, what are your pain points? Those are things that happen like in a moment and they feel it. You know, I keep using the example of the sample that went bad and now I have to go slice another biopsy, or good God, worse, I have to actually go get the patient in for a new biopsy. Holy cow. And so those are things I can remember the moment. It really hurt me at a moment. And I can remember being angry. Okay, but a gain gap is like, I don't understand, like if I'm, let's see, I want to drive, you know, more traffic to my web service site. If I could just figure out some way to drive more traffic, it's not as specific as a pain point, but there's something like I want to grow, I want to double my business. And so pain points are getting rid of things where you felt, you know, where things have stung you before, and you can point to it. And by the way, when you're asking customers these questions, they will actually respond to you in an emotional way. So when you're listening to customers, don't just listen to the words they say. I encourage you, record the customer if they will allow you. Most will, if you promise not to share it outside your company. But listen to the tone of their voice. Listen to if they start swearing. Listen to if they start yelling. That tells you the intensity of the pain. Gain is duller. It's like I have an aspiration, you know, I want to sell my business in 5 years. And what can you do to help me do that? So it's not as sharp, but it's still an opportunity to serve an unmet need.
Great. Thank you so much. A question's come in from Michelle B. Can you show slide 28 again? And can we get a little brief overview of slide 28 again?
Yeah, let me get up there, 28. Oh, I think I might have hit one too. Sorry about that. I thought I was right on time. This one.
Yes. Can you do a quick, just a recap on this one?
Yeah, so we said, look, is design thinking, you come into a company that has what I would call traditional design. And that's, you know, that's the group of engineers sitting around a room, a product marketer who went out and got some information, came back, gave the engineers a spec, and they designed the product, right? I would call that the old way of thinking. Very common, you know, go out, get me a spec, and we'll design to it. So that's design thinking. It has really strong points, which you see in orange, but it has some very weak points, which you see in gray. Now, when I do design thinking, I think of it as additive. It not only has those 4 advantages of traditional thinking, which we don't want to lose, but it adds this human-centered side by getting our whole design team empathetic to customers, breaks down silos by having more than just the design team, you know, having customer-facing, you know, in some cases, even having customers on the team. That's rare, but it happens. But having salesmen on the team, having iterative user feedback, so we're constantly going back and testing our value prop with our customers with little 3D models. And then finally, it has a huge amount of workflow expertise in it because of those things above. So, you know, the idea is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Take your design process and add these 4 things to it to go from good to great.
Fantastic. Thanks, George. We have time for this one last question. We don't have time or people to do all this work from segmentation to getting customer feedback. What should a small company do?
You know, that is, I would say, almost the single biggest question I get in every part of the innovation journey. And it's a hard question to answer. And what I can tell you is this: you need to right size what you're doing. You've got to have some sense of what your segment is. If you say I'm a small company and I don't have time to segment, I'm going to say to you, you're going to waste a ton of money. So what you want to do is, okay, you don't need to go hire a consulting company and spend $300,000 segmenting, but you need to do some level of segmentation. And so what I would say to small companies is you have to do all the steps. If you miss a link in the chain, your product is going to wind up disappointing. but right size it. Don't be overwhelmed and see segmentation and think, oh my gosh, I have to go by the Frost and Sullivan report. I have to have 3 guys working on it for 3 months. You don't. Don't think, oh, I have to go do customer interviews. I've got to talk to 200 customers. I've got to talk on 3 continents. I've got to fly in and see them in person. You don't. But you do have to talk to your customers. You do have to observe and see users. So do every step right sized. It's a little bit like saying, I have a small house. I don't have room for that big kitchen and that big living room and that big foundation, that huge roof, right? But you've got to have all the pieces for it to work. They just all have to be right sized to what you're doing.
Great. Well, thank you, George, and thank you to all of our attendees today for joining us on this really great topic. Absolutely fantastic, and thanks again to everyone. Feel free to reach out to George at george.ellis@leanfocus.com or check out LeanFocus's website. But thanks again for everyone. Take care.
Thanks,
Have a
everybody.
great day.
Look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.